Okay, we are recording. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem, B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh Natzliach. We're doing parasha. We're actually still doing last week's parasha. We're doing a makeup. Sorry for the late start today. We actually had a big orientation and stuff. So like actually Nisim Black was singing. So ended a little late. But oh, Anthony, how's it going? Hello. Hey Naomi.
Hi.
You have video? Let's get some video going. Smaller group over here. See each other. Fine. So let's do some parasha. We're finishing up last week's parasha. So we started last week. We're moving along in the parasha. We got up to the point that Yaakov Avinu has run away from home, and Yaakov's on his way. He's running away. He's trying to go to, first off, not die from Esav trying to kill him, but also number two, to try to find a wife. So he runs away to Haran. He runs away to the Iraq area, old school Avraham family. And along the way, makes a little stop along the way. He has a dream with a ladder. I think we spoke about that last week a little bit. The ladder with the angels going up and down. Hashem blesses him, says you're the chosen one, and he keeps going off to Haran. Okay, so we start off, and he gets to Haran. And the first thing he does is, you got to go find the people. So where does he find the people? He sees a bunch of shepherds hanging out outside of a well. So first off, he goes up to them, he goes, hello guys, what are you guys doing? Why is everybody just hanging around? Why isn't everybody working? So we spoke back in our first classes that every one of the avot, every one of the forefathers had a certain character trait. So Avraham was known for his chesed, was known for his kindness. Yitzchak was known for his strict justice. Yaakov is a bit of the synthesis. He's not too much kindness, not too much justice, somewhere more in the middle. And he's known as, his attribute is known as tiferet, but also known as truth, as emet. As we say in the pasuk, we say in Tefillah, Titen emet leYaakov, give truth to Yaakov. Yaakov's midah is emet, is truth. Now, we said also that the different forefathers, their biggest tests in life was against their against their character trait. So if Avram is chesed, and it's so easy for him to do kindness, it's so natural for him to do kindness, how does God test Avram? He tests Avram when not to do kindness, when you have to like slaughter your son, Akedat Yitzchak, bind your son. While Yitzchak, we said his attribute is justice, is being strict. So what's his test? To have compassion on Esav. So each one has their character trait and each one is tested. So Yaakov's character trait is all about emet. It's all about truth. But we're going to see, we actually already saw, and we're going to see again, that Yaakov is going to keep getting tested against his attribute trait. He's tested by when his mother tells him, go take the bracha. He's tested with Lavan. He's going to have to know when not to use emet in his crazy circumstances. But where do we actually see his attribute of truth most obvious? Of like not being a test, but actually acting that way? At the start of last week's parasha. When he gets to that well, he sees all of these shepherds, and they're not working. They're just waiting by the well. And he goes, why are you guys doing that? You guys are stealing from your bosses. That's not how life works. You can't be a cheat. You got to do this. You see, this concept of truth is really bothering him. What do they respond to him? They respond, no, there's a rock on top of the well. And the rock is very heavy. And, sorry, we can't take it off. We have to wait till everybody gets together in order to roll it off because it's so heavy. At that moment, he also says, oh, do you know my family? My family's here. Have you heard of Lavan? Now, Nina, who's Lavan?
Isn't he the dad?
Who's dad?
Avram's?
No.
Oh, wait, I'm making a mistake. I forgot which dad.
Who is Lavan? Lavan
Is he
is,
the dad of Rachel and Leah, I think?
yes, he's Rachel and Leah's dad. And who's his sister? Who's Lavan's
Wasn't
sister?
she evil? Wasn't she evil?
Yes, he does pretty bad stuff.
He I don't know. told Yaakov wanted to marry Rachel, I think.
He was, yeah, okay, we'll
And
get to that. We're about to get to that story, Rachel and Leah. Excellent. We're about to get to that story. But we already met Lavan. We already met Lavan like 2-3 parshas ago. We met Lavan when Avram was looking for a wife for Yitzchak. He sends his servant Eliezer, go find for me a wife. And he sends him off to his family. And when he gets to his family, he meets Rivka's father, Betuel, and he meets Rivka's brother, Lavan. So Lavan is Rivka's brother, and soon to be Yaakov's father-in-law with Lavan's two daughters. Now Lavan's name, what does Lavan mean in Hebrew?
White.
Lavan means white. It means white. White normally symbolizes purity, symbolizes holiness, straightness is white. Lavan is known to be the most anti-Lavan. He is as black can be. There is nothing real about Lavan. He pretends that he's white when really he's not. Lavan is kind of known as this used car salesman, and he's going to make a lot of problems. But right now, Yaakov is looking for Lavan because he wants to marry into the family. Because with all the issues of Lavan's going to have two very righteous daughters. He's going to have a daughter named Rachel, a daughter for Leah, and Yaakov had always heard that he was supposed to marry Rachel. Okay, we'll get to Rachel in a second. But right now, he gets to the well, and the shepherds all say, oh, look, your cousin Rachel is coming with the sheep. Now, interesting, why is Rachel with the sheep? Rachel is herding her father's sheep. Why is Rachel herding the sheep? Any idea? Why is Rachel herding the sheep? Sammy, with us?
I'm here.
It's not weird that Rachel is herding the sheep. How often do you send like your daughter? She's probably like 16, 17, according to simple interpretation. Is she the one that you normally go do all your work with your sheep? So the commentators explain that there weren't any brothers yet. Lavan had no boys. Later on, we're going to see Lavan has boys. But right now, Lavan has no sons. He only has his daughter, his oldest daughter, Leah, his second daughter, Rachel. We'll get to in a second why is Leah not the one with the sheep and why it's the second daughter. But Rachel is now coming with the sheep. Now, actually, Rachel in Hebrew, you know what the word Rachel means? This is like a high-level Hebrew word. The word Rachel in Hebrew means sheep. It actually means sheep. There's a thing in Hebrew called Semer Rechelim. Semer Rechelim means the wool of sheep. So Rachel actually means sheep, which makes a lot of sense because she's involved with the sheep. So Rachel comes with her sheep. Yaakov sees her, and in this major act of romance, he by himself pushes off the rock, the Evan, the boulder that's on top of the well. The other shepherds needed many to get together, but here we see Yaakov is flexing a little bit in front of Rachel. He takes it off, gives her a kiss, and cries. Powerful moment in the Torah. Did we speak last week? Nina, were you in the class last week?
No, it was Thanksgiving, so I wasn't here.
That was Thursday. That's Tuesday class.
Yeah, that was Thursday class, but I was here Tuesday class.
Did we speak about, do you remember if we spoke about why does Yaakov cry?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
We spoke about how he was being sacrificed.
How he was, okay, good. So let's talk about, so what happens? Yaakov sees now Rachel, the one he was told he was always going to marry, meets up with her, gets so excited, does this dramatic romantic display of affection, and then he cries. Why does he cry? Any ideas? Naomi, any ideas why would Yaakov cry right now?
I'm not sure.
So what is this scene? Yaakov just ran away from his brother. His brother wants to kill him. He has nobody. The only thing he knows about is that he has some kind of family in Haran. And he has this little legend of when he was born that you have a cousin who you're supposed to marry, Rachel, and he now gets to Haran. And the very first thing that happens is he sees this Rachel coming. They tell him, "Oh, that's your cousin. That's the cousin." And at that point, you saw a little glimmer of hope, a little bit of happiness, a little bit. Oh my God, things might start to get a little bit better in my life right now. And out of the emotions on the simple level, he starts to cry. Rashi gives two more interpretations. Rashi also says, why does he cry? So this is a little bit of a sad one, because the second he saw Rachel, the one that he loves, the one that he wants to marry, at that exact moment, he also saw in a prophecy that he's not going to get to be buried next to her. That even though Rachel was his love, he's not going to be with her for eternity. She's going to be buried somewhere else. And he saw that at that point. So he cried, realizing the end is not going to be as sweet as he would want it to be. And Rashi gives one more interpretation, that he had lost all his money. How did he lose all of his money? So the Midrash tells us that as Yaakov was running away, Esav, his brother, his evil brother, sent his son to kill Yaakov. Now Esav's son's name is Eliphaz. Eliphaz is said, you have to go and kill Yaakov. Eliphaz catches up to Yaakov and says to Yaakov, Yaakov, I came to kill you. But then Eliphaz starts to have a little bit of guilt. He says to himself, wait a second, can I really kill you? On the one hand, my father told me to kill you, and there's kibud ava'em, there's honoring my parents, and based on honoring my parents, I have to kill you. But on the other hand, you're the righteous Yaakov, and my grandfather Yitzchak taught me, don't just kill righteous people. So he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. So Yaakov told him, he says, oh, you know what? If you take away all my money and you make me really poor, just leave me with my walking stick. If I'm so poor, it's like I'm dead anyways. And that could count. And Eliphaz listens to him, steals all of Yaakov's money. So now Yaakov is poor, and that's why he's crying, because he wanted to give gifts. He wanted to have a wedding ring. He wanted to be, and he's coming as this bum who has absolutely nothing when he gets there. And that's the second reason Rashi gives for why he's crying. Now, interesting. The Torah tells us this guy Eliphaz, Esav's son, is going to turn out to be the father of Amalek. Amalek is known to be the most evil of evil nations, who's going to attack us and try to kill us. Why is this Eliphaz the father of Amalek? Because what's his character trait? His character trait is, on the one hand, he wants to be religious, he wants to be holy, he wants to honor his parents. That's why he wants to kill Yaakov. But he has a question in his head about morality. But how could I kill a righteous person? So that's kind of messed up. To think that it's a mitzvah to kill somebody righteous because your father said so, to confuse kibud ava'em. Anybody who understands the basis of morality will tell you, if your parent tells you to kill somebody who's righteous, you don't listen to your parents. There's no kibud ava'em there. You just stop. You don't do evil things because your parents tell you to do evil. But the fact that Eliphaz couldn't figure that out and even thought it was a mitzvah to do it, that's going to lead to his son Amalek. Amalek is going to be the father of a nation of people who are going to attack the women, who are going to attack the children, and just do some of the most terrible things possible. Okay. So now Rachel sees Yaakov crying, helping her out. Yaakov then gives water to all of her sheep. Rachel runs home to her family, and she tells her father Lavan, you're not going to believe it. Our family is here. Our family is here. So Lavan now runs out, and he wants to go greet Yaakov. Now some learn Yaakov in the positive. He wants to greet his cousin, bring him home. Others learn it a little bit more negative, because Lavan is known to be a bit of a trickster, a bit of a used car salesman. And it says he comes and he hugs Yaakov, and then he kisses Yaakov. And in one of the weirdest divrei Torah that those that have gone to Jewish high school might have heard, because it's one of these more wild things that teachers try to it's crazy Rashi. Rashi tells us that Lavan kisses Yaakov on the lips, because he actually even French kisses Yaakov because he wants to see if he has gold or silver in his mouth. Let's not take this midrash literally. You could if you want to, but you don't have to. But really what it's saying is Lavan is trying to size him up. My cousin just came. When his grandfather Avraham sent the messenger, he sent the messenger with all these gifts and all this wealth. He comes from a rich family. So Lavan is trying to check, okay, did that rich cousin come? He's gonna start buying us out and giving us all these gifts. But ultimately, Lavan finds out that Yaakov has nothing. And Yaakov has nothing. He comes there poor. According to some commentators, Yaakov tells him the story about what happened. All of his stuff got stolen. How his brother's trying to kill him. And Lavan looks at him and says, okay, I hear. And after a couple of days, Yaakov starts to work for his uncle. And after a couple more days go by, Lavan sees he's a good worker. And he says to him, okay, Yaakov, how can I pay you? What can I pay you? You're working hard right now. I don't want people working for free. What can I pay you? So Yaakov looks at him and says, you know what? Your daughter Rachel. I want to marry Rachel. And Yaakov suggests, let me work for 7 years, and that way I'll be able to marry your daughter Rachel. Okay, now let's back it up. The Torah tells us Lavan had 2 daughters, one Leah and one Rachel. And the Torah says that Leah had Einayim Rakot. Anybody know what Einayim Rakot means? Einayim Rakot? Leah had Einayim Rakot. She had soft eyes. Rakot is soft. She had soft. Now, what does soft eyes mean? On a simple level, soft eyes means she had beautiful eyes. Leah had beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous eyes. The pasuk goes on and says Leah had beautiful eyes, and Rachel was Yafat Torah Yafat Mareh. She was totally beautiful, which some commentators explain that Rachel was like drop dead gorgeous. Every part of her was perfect. Leah was pretty, but what was especially pretty of Leah was her eyes. The second you looked at her, she had these beautiful, beautiful eyes. Okay, that's one opinion. Another opinion says, why does she have soft eyes? She has soft eyes means that it's hard for her to in the desert area where we have all the sandstorms and stuff. It's hard to walk in that area, and that explains why her younger sister Rachel was the shepherd with the sheep, because being outside in the sun and being outside with the sand was difficult for Leah's eyes. But then there's a more famous understanding of why she had soft eyes. Anybody know why Leah had soft eyes? Famous Dvar Torah, why Leah had soft eyes. Any ideas? Leah's soft eyes. They were soft for a reason. So Rashi comes along and tells us that Leah was crying. Leah had been crying and crying and crying, and she had soft eyes. They were soft from the tears, from the redness of her crying. Because what happened with Leah? They were always told since they were born, oh, 2 daughters were born to Lavan, and 2 sons were born to his sister Rivka. So we have 2 first cousins of 2 boys, 2 girls. So he said, okay, the older one will marry the older one, and the younger one will marry the younger one. So Esav will marry Leah, and Yaakov will marry Rachel. When Leah heard the rumors that she's supposed to marry Esav, she already heard the rumors that Esav was evil, that Esav had killed somebody, that Esav was a bad guy. So Leah starts crying. She starts crying and crying and praying to Hashem, please, please, please don't let me marry Esav. And we're going to see in a second her prayers are going to be answered, but not the way anybody thought. But Leah was crying and crying, crying, please, I don't want to marry the evil Esav. That's what Rashi says. One more idea that's brought down is why is she crying? Because originally we said last week that between Yaakov and Esav, there was originally supposed to be a plan that Esav was supposed to be the working guy and Yaakov was supposed to be the learning guy. So Yaakov was supposed to stay in holy environments, stay in the yeshiva, while Esav was going to go out and work the land and be with the people. And they say Esav's job was much harder because when you're out there in the real world, you have to deal with much bigger Yetzer Hara. And ultimately Esav's going to fail and he's going to give into his Yetzer Hara. And Yaakov is going to take his bracha, and Yaakov, in a certain sense, is going to become Esav when he gets that bracha. Because we're going to see in our parsha, Yaakov is going to have to go and work the land. He's going to have to deal with his father-in-law Lavan, who's kind of like an Esav kind of figure. So Yaakov is actually going to become Esav eventually. But when it comes to Rachel and Leah, they see the same exact idea. That Leah was a person who was more out there in the world. Leah is actually known as a yatzanit. She goes outside. She's more involved. While Rachel is more of an introvert. She was more staying in the she's like the sem girl who never leaves the seminary. Leah is more out there. So Leah is crying. Why? Because she's crying to Hashem, can I conquer my Yetzer Hara? So one last idea, why is she always crying? She's crying because she's praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let me be able to conquer my Yetzer Hara. Let me actually make something of my life and do big things. Okay. So Yaakov tells Lavan, his future father-in-law, I want to marry Rachel. I'm going to work for you for 7 years to marry Rachel. Lavan says, no problem. And Yaakov gets to work. It sounds like around this time Lavan gets a bracha and he starts having sons as well. But Yaakov is his main worker, and he's working the sheep. He's a shepherd, and Lavan's business starts getting better and better. And then 7 years go by. And Yaakov's waiting to get married, and Lavan doesn't do anything. It actually says that the 7 years went by very quickly. It was like single days in Yaakov's eyes, which commentators say he was so busy working on himself, getting ready for this marriage. The time was able to go back pretty quick. And but now 7 years go by, and Lavan doesn't give him Rachel as a wife. So Yaakov gets all upset, and he runs to his father-in-law. Hello, father-in-law, we had a deal. Where's my wife? It's time to get married. Lavan says, no problem. Let's have a marriage ceremony. Let's get you married to Rachel. But then something goes totally wrong. Okay, who knows the story? Somebody started telling me the story before. Something goes totally wrong. What goes wrong? Yaakov just worked 7 years to marry Rachel, and then something goes wrong. Nina, you know the story?
Of Yaakov and how he was supposed to marry Rivka, but he tricked him into marrying Leah, and he worked 14 years altogether just
Awesome. How did he trick him?
What?
How did he trick him?
Because he put like the same veil on Leia that was supposed to be on Rivka, but he was supposed to say a word like to know that it was her, so Lavan wouldn't trick them, and Leia didn't, I mean, Rivka didn't want to embarrass her sister, so she told Leia the word.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now snap it up for Nina, people. Snap it up for Nina. Awesome. That's good. Excellent. So what happens? Levan says, "Okay, I'll marry you." And then the night of the wedding, he pulls the old switcheroo, and under the veil is Leah as opposed to Rachel. There actually are some opinions that say that Leah and Rachel were almost identical except for the eyes. So once you cover up the face, it's a little bit easier to pull off that trick. Also, there's a cute little joke they say in Israel that as they were getting married, people in the background were going, Leah, 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 trying to warn Yaakov, but he didn't get the hint. So at the wedding, they do this. Actually, today in Jewish weddings, we still cover the face. But halacha is that the chatan has to look under the veil at some point just to make sure that it's the right person, and that comes out of this story. So Lavan makes the old switcheroo. Yaakov doesn't realize, marries Leah that night, sleeps with Leah that night, wakes up in the morning, the sun rises, and he looks and he sees, whoa, it's Leah, it's not Rachel. Now, you're saying, good, Nina mentioned the Midrash. That part of the Midrash was that Yaakov never really trusted his father-in-law, Lavan, and he had went to Rachel, he says, Rachel, let's make some kind of secret password. Let's make some kind of simanim, some kind of signs, that I'm going to ask you under the chuppah what those signs are. And when you show me those signs, I'm going to know that it's you. Amy, you heard what those, do you know what those signs were?
I actually don't know.
So there's one opinion. It's not written down in the Torah, but there's an opinion that says that the signs that Rachel gave Leah didn't even know they were signs. Meaning Leah didn't realize that the trick was happening. When we asked what happened to Leah that night, she didn't realize what was going on? Leah never realized what was going on. We're going to see in a later story, she's going to say something pretty nasty to Rachel, and it only makes sense that she would say something so nasty if she didn't realize that her sister just helped her. But like you said, Rachel didn't want her sister Leah to be embarrassed, so she gives over the password. What was the password? Okay, so at this point in Jewish history, we have the very first Jews, and the very first Jews right now were Avram and Sarah who have died, and we have Yitzchak and Rivka, and we have Yaakov. So how do you become a Jew? So back then, there were certain Jewish halachot that were already in practice, such as Brit Milah, such as the making challah we saw in Sarah's tent. There were certain halachot that were involved in being Jewish. So in a certain sense, the Jewish women, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, are going to go through some type of a conversion process to marry into the Avram family. So we know in Judaism that what makes men and women different in halakha? Naomi, with us? Naomi, what makes men and women different in Jewish halakha? Do you know? Sammy? What makes men and women different? So when it comes to halakha, women are two things. In one area, women are more lenient. They're not obligated in time-bound commandments. You'll learn that probably in Mrs. Schwartz's class. On the other hand, there's 3 mitzvot that are special for women. Nina, you know any of the 3 mitzvot that are special for women?
I think giving birth is one of them.
Okay, giving birth, interestingly enough, not a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to have kids. But
that's what I meant, to have kids, because only women can have kids.
So actually, interestingly enough, women aren't obligated to have kids, men are. It's actually interesting halakha. Men are obligated to have kids, women are not. I actually heard once an interesting idea. Why are women not obligated to have kids? Because there's a pain and a suffering and it was dangerous. So God never commanded them to do it. They have to want to do it. But for men, there's actually an obligation.
Oh, okay. Because I thought that what was like the saying that they would say, like it's a mitzvah to have like, there was like a saying that they would say, like it's a mitzvah to have children.
No, yeah, it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to have children, and a woman who has children does a mitzvah. But she's actually not obligated. The man is the one who has the obligation that he must do it. Women, if they do it, they get a mitzvah. and a woman naturally wants to have kids, so it actually works out pretty well. But fine. So mitzvahs that apply only to a woman. One, nidah, the laws of family purity, of menstruational laws, of purity laws when it comes for women. That's only for women. Nidah. Hadlakat nerot, lighting Shabbat candles. While a guy could light Shabbat candles, the primary mitzvah goes to the woman. And challah, making challah for Shabbat, taking the challah, making the bracha on the challah, is also primarily a woman's mitzvah. If you take those three mitzvahs, challah, nidah, and hadlakat nerot, they actually spell out china, like a henna party they do before they get married. Because at a henna party, you teach the Jewish women about the three mitzvot of henna, challah, nidah, and hadlakat nerot. So what Yaakov was doing actually was teaching Rachel, these are the laws you have to know to be a Jew. And when I asked you under the chuppah, if you're Jewish, just tell me the halachot. What did Rachel do? She went to Leah and says, Leah, oh, I heard that our father had a different change of plans. You're going to marry Yaakov now. So if you're going to marry Yaakov, he's a big tzaddik, he's a nice Jewish boy. I'm going to teach you how to convert and be a nice Jewish woman. So Rachel teaches Leah these three mitzvot, and those are that's the password under the chuppah. Okay. Yaakov wakes up in the morning, he realizes that it's Leah, and he gets so upset. He runs to his father and he says, Lavan, what'd you do to me? How could you do this to me? And Lavan, Lavan is always straight, and he's a straight edge, and he's going to yell right back in the most cynical way possible. Lavan looks at Yaakov and says to Yaakov, yeah, I married you to Leah. Of course, yeah, I tricked you. Because where I come from, we don't put the younger one before the older one. Rachel is the younger sister. I cannot marry Rachel off before I marry off Leah. And that's why I married you to Leah. That's the custom here. That's how we do things here. We have respect for the older daughters. Now, Yaakov doesn't respond. Yaakov accepts. Instead, they make a compromise. And Yaakov says that after the Sheva Brachot, after the 7 days go by, we'll have I'll marry Rachel, and then I'll work 7 more years on credit. So I'll work a total of 14 years to marry both sisters. Why doesn't Yaakov fight back? Anybody? Why doesn't Yaakov fight back? Lavan just messed him over. Why doesn't he fight back? Not only does he not fight back, he also wants to marry Rachel. When Rachel gave the signs over to Leah, she didn't know how Yaakov would respond. Yaakov could have woken up in the morning, got so upset, so angry, said, I don't want to even marry you anymore, Rachel. This was the best case scenario for Rachel. She had now to share her husband with her sister, which itself is crazy. But why doesn't Yaakov fight back? Doesn't even seem too angry. He's angry when he first goes to Lavan. But once Lavan told him, by us, we marry off the older one before the younger one. We respect the older one. What did Yaakov hear in Lavan's words that made him think differently? So I heard a beautiful idea. I think Raikon says it in his class. I heard it in some other classes as well. That when Yaakov heard the words of Lavan, he said, "Oh my God, over here, the custom over there is to respect the older one. We won't give the younger before the older." Yaakov started realizing maybe Hashem is telling me that what happened back before when I took the bracha from Esav, maybe I did it in such like a trickery kind of way. Now I'm getting tricked in a very similar kind of way. And he might have seen some like divine punishment or divine retribution or maybe divine fixing in what was going on in this story. Okay. But Yaakov ultimately marries both, continues on his working job. And now it says that Leah felt hated. She felt hated because Yaakov loved Rachel more than her. Now, it's not clear from here that Yaakov didn't love Leah. It sounds maybe like Yaakov did love Leah. But when you compare the way Yaakov related to Leah to the way he related to Rachel, from Leah's perspective, Yaakov just loved Rachel much, much more. And this is going to lead to a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of sadness. And Hashem saw that Leah felt hated. So what does Hashem do? Gives her a bunch of kids. The first kid she has is Reuven. What is Reuven? Reu comes from the language of seeing. Reu ben, look, there's a son over here. Reu ben, there's a son. Leah says, Hashem saw my suffering and gave me a child. Then she gets pregnant a second time. And she names the second kid Shimon. Shimon from the language of Shmiat, to hear. Hashem heard my cries, and now I have Shimon. Then, by child number 3, she names him Levi. What does Levi mean? Levi is a language of levaya, like a funeral is called a funeral because everybody escorts the dead. Levaya means like escort somebody, to walk with somebody. Now that she has 3 kids, she says to herself, wait a second, I have 3 kids. I only have 2 hands. So that means my husband has to follow me around now, carrying the 3rd kid. That's why she names the 3rd kid Levi. Then, when she has son number 4, this is big stuff over here, son number 4, she now says Yehuda. We're naming it to Yehuda, Jewish people. Apam Odet Hashem. This time I'm going to thank God, because when she got to 4 kids, she says, whoa, now I got more than I expected. Because everybody knew there's going to be 4 wives, each one with 3 kids. And now that I have 4, I already have more than I'm supposed to have. That's a really big deal. And she thanks Hashem for her personal miracle, for her personal chesed to her. And it's actually the first time we find in the Torah Hashem somebody thanking Hashem for a chesed that wasn't global. It was a personal nice thing just for Leah to be able to have so many kids. Okay. Rachel this time can't have kids. We already spoke in previous classes that Sarah and Rivka, the imahot, they struggle having kids, and Rachel's also going to have struggle having kids. The only one who's not struggle is Leah, because God felt bad for Leah. But Rachel struggles to have kids. Hashem wants her to pray. She goes to Yaakov, goes, Yaakov, hello, I don't have kids. If I don't have kids, it's like I'm dead. I want kids. If I don't have it, what is life worth if I don't have a child? Yaakov is pretty tough with her and says, am I God? Like, am I in control of God? Can I tell God what to do? He's kind of basically saying, like, I just had kids with your sister. It's not me, it's you. Very harsh words. Chazal have a little bit of critique on those harsh words. So Rachel needs a plan B. So what's her plan B? So she looked back and she said, oh, wait a second. My grandmother, Sarah, when she couldn't have kids, she told Avram to marry the maidservant. Now, that story didn't go so well, but Hagar, the maidservant, did get pregnant. So she says to herself, you know what? I have an idea. She takes her maidservant, Bilhah. She says to Yaakov, marry Bilhah. She'll be the surrogate mother. And it works out fine. Bilhah marries Yaakov, and they have 2 kids, Dan and Naphtali. Beautiful. Fast forward a little bit more, and Leah says, wow, that was a pretty good idea. Leah at this point didn't have kids for a bit. So she says, you know what? I like this idea. Yaakov, take my maidservant Zilpah, and then they have 2 kids, Gad and Asher. Okay. Then at this point, Rachel still can't have kids. Leah at this point is just busy with her 4 kids. And the Torah tells a story of her oldest son, Reuven. Reuven had gone out to the fields to pick flowers for his mother. And he was picking dudaim, because it's cute when little kids bring their parents flowers. And he's picking for his mom flowers, a beautiful act of love for his mother. And as he's walking back, Rachel sees these dudaim, she sees these flowers, and she looks at her sister, Leah, and says, Leah, can I have those flowers? Now, why does Rachel want those flowers? What is special about those flowers? So there are some parts of Chazal that say, oh, those flowers are very special because they're fertility drugs. Some say they're a nice perfume that increases libido, makes the chances of having a child a little bit stronger over here. Others say, no, what do the flowers symbolize? They symbolize the simple love of a child to his mother. Little boy Reuven, bringing his mother Leah flowers is the beautiful feeling of a child to a mother. Rachel doesn't have a child. She's Reuven's aunt. And if any of you have an aunt, I have one of these aunts who never got married, never had a kid, and she lives for her nieces and nephews. So Rachel is like, okay, can I have Reuven's flowers? Can I feel a little bit that love of a husband? Now Leah gets upset right now. And Leah looks at Rachel and says, she's still feeling hated by Yaakov. First you steal my husband. Now you want to steal my flowers? Now this is very harsh, especially because Rachel gave her the signs. And this is why many commentators want to learn, Leah never knew she got the signs. Because if she would have known that, she would have never said that, because Rachel could have looked at her and said, you stole my husband? It's only because of me that you can even marry him in the first place. Yaakov was always meant to be for me. I gave you the signs. But Rachel doesn't do that. Actually, opposite. Rachel heard her sister's pain. She heard, oh my God, Leah doesn't feel the love of a husband. And that's when it happens. It clicks in Rachel's head. She goes, wow, what am I lacking? I'm lacking the feeling of a love of a mother to a child. And Leah's feeling the lacking of a love of a husband. She says, let's make a trade. Tonight was supposed to be the night that Yaakov comes to my tent. I'll give you Yaakov for the night. You give me your son's flowers. So therefore, you could feel the love of a husband, and I could feel the love of a child. And at this point, the Rachel and Leah relationship begins to really become beautiful. You have sisters who don't want to become embarrassed. We're going to see in a minute that Leah is going to pray for her sister too in 1 minute also, and it's going to be reciprocal. Although at this point, Leah, that initial outburst, Leah is going to come out and fight for her sister too, and make sacrifices for her sister as well. That night, Leah goes out. She meets Yaakov in the field and says, Yaakov, tonight I bought you for some flowers. You're coming to my tent for the night. And that night, Leah becomes pregnant with Yisachar, who's going to become the major pillar of Torah. And then Leah's going to have one more child, Zevulun. Okay, beautiful. And then the Torah says, now Rachel gets pregnant. Yay, Mazal Tov. Now Rachel gets pregnant. And the Torah says, Vayiskor, Hashem remembers Rachel. Hashem remembers Rachel, opens up her womb. But says Rashi, what did Hashem remember? Hashem remembered that she shared the signs with her husband. He remembered that mitzvah. So we see from here, according to Rashi, at least it appears from Rashi on the surface, Rachel would have never been able to have kids if she wasn't willing to sacrifice and share her husband with Leah. But why does Hashem only remember it right now? Why didn't Hashem remember it right away? She had already shared it a couple of years earlier. Why is it only now that Hashem remembers Rachel? So the Torah tells us, so I heard a beautiful idea, because Rachel, it's true she gave the signs to her sister, so her sister wouldn't be embarrassed. But at the same time, when Leah yelled at her and said, you stole my husband, Rachel could have yelled back at her and said, no, I gave you the signs. But she didn't. She was quiet and again thought of her sister's pain and helped her pain. That takes a level of crazy strength. That's a crazy mitzvah. And that's what reminds Hashem of the mitzvah of Rachel, and Rachel gets pregnant. But right before Rachel got pregnant with her first kid, Leah got pregnant with her seventh kid. And the Gemara tells us that Leah was pregnant with a boy. And she prayed to Hashem, Hashem, please, 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 make it be a girl. Because at this point, Leah already had 6 sons. And Bilhah and Zilpah, the 2 maidservants, each had 2. So there was already 10 sons in the world. And Leah knew there was only room for 2 more sons for 12 tribes. And if she would have had a 7th son, then the most Rachel could have ever had in life was only 1. And that would have been embarrassing for Rachel. So Leah now sacrifices her 7th son, prays to her 7th tribe, and prays for this son to be a girl. And it's Dinah. And Dinah is going to do some great stuff. We'll speak about Dinah really in this week's parsha, and maybe we'll speak about Dinah's daughter as well in the coming weeks. But Leah's like, whoa, makes a sacrifice for Rachel, and now Rachel gets pregnant, and she gets pregnant with Yosef. Now, truthfully, the Kabbalah says that's not what happened. According to the Kabbalah, Rachel got pregnant with Dinah originally, and when Leah prayed, their stomachs actually switched. The baby switched in the stomachs, and that's why Yosef was originally supposed to be Dinah, has a little bit of feminine character traits we're going to see in 2 weeks' parsha, or next week's parsha. He's going to be busy playing with his hair in the mirror. He's going to be doing a lot of crying, a little more feminine traits, because he had a little more feminine aspects. And Dinah, in this week's parsha, we're going to see, according to the commentaries, has some more masculine attributes. Where does that come from? It comes from this old switcheroo in the stomach. Okay. So Rachel gets pregnant. She gives birth to Yosef, and it's big stuff. And everybody at this point is much happier, and things are good. And but Yaakov realizes that once Yosef is born, he now has the ability to go back and fight Esau. We'll talk about this next week. That the koch of Yaakov is to be able to fight against Esau, of Yosef is to fight against Esau. So now Yaakov wants to go home. But then Lavan comes up to him and says, no, you can't go home. Let's make a business deal. I'll give you more money. I'll give you more parnasah. And Lavan and Yaakov make this deal. It's a really weird deal beyond this class, where Yaakov will get like the dinky cattle, the ones with stripes and speckles and spots, and he makes this deal with Lavan. But Lavan keeps changing it. But Yaakov does all this spooky stuff, and ultimately he gets very, very, very rich. And when he gets very, very rich, his brother-in-laws, Lavan's younger sons, start to get jealous of him. And Yaakov says, okay, I think it's time to go back home. I think it's time to escape back home. Actually, God even sends an angel and says it's time to go back home. He speaks to Rachel and Leah, and Rachel and Leah are like, you know what, you're right. It's time to go home. We don't care about our father. He doesn't treat us right anyways. And they try to sneak away at night. But ultimately, Lavan is going to catch up to them. There's the famous story of Rachel stealing her father's idols and not telling her father, not telling Yaakov. Ultimately, Rachel gets cursed and she's going to die young because of this. But ultimately, Lavan comes, catches up to Yaakov, tries to make a lot of problems. Hashem stops him. They make a treaty, and the parsha ends off with Yaakov on his way back home to face his brother, which is really the start of this week's parasha. And that's the end of last week's parsha Vayetzeh. B'ezrat Hashem, next class we'll pick it up with Vayishlach. Thank you, everybody. Yom Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yom Tov.